Part 69. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 683. Miss Wang, a soft voice sounded in her ears. Duan Yuking frowned slightly. When she opened her eyes were blurred, and it took a long time to see clearly what was in front of her. Miss Wang, seeing her open her eyes, Mu Yangling called her again, but the person on the bed only frowned slightly, with a confused expression, and turned to look at her suspiciously following the voice. Mu Yangling smiled at her. The girl is awake. Are you better? You are. Duan Yuking became sober now, and looked at Mu Yangling in confusion. Mu Yangling helped her up, poured her a glass of water, and said after watching her moisten her throat, "You are seriously injured, and now I am recuperating at home." Mu Yangling suddenly asked when she saw her expression slightly relaxed, "How does Miss Duan feel now?" Duan Yuking put down the teacup and smiled gratefully, "Thank you, ma'am, I feel much better now. I don't know the maid beside me." "You mean Miss Kyohui? She went to make medicine for you." Mu Yangling asked softly, "How did Miss Duan get hurt?" Duan Yuking said vaguely, "I met a bad person on the road, and I accidentally hurt." She didn't know how Kyohui explained her background, so she didn't dare to speak too clearly. Duan Yuking's eyes quickly turned around the room. Seeing that the room was exquisitely furnished, she knew that this family was either rich or expensive. Normally, they were fleeing for their lives, so they should keep a low profile. How could she appear here? Duan Yuking looked at the door anxiously, and asked, "I don't know what madam's name is yet." Mu Yangling looked at her expression carefully, and said with a soft smile, "I am Princess Rongjun, Miss Duan can just call me Princess. Duan Yuking's face changed slightly. "Princess Rongjun? There is no Rongjun king in Dali at all. No, she fled to Daki. When Daki Emperor ascended the throne, he made his younger brother the Rongjun king." When Duan Yuking got excited, her waist and abdomen hurt, and her face was completely drained of blood. She covered the wound and almost bit her lips to bleed. Girl, Kyohui, who came in with the medicine, happened to see the scene, and hurried over, put the medicine on the table next to her and rushed in, looking at her excitedly and anxiously. "Girl, are you awake? If you touched a wound, I will call you the imperial doctor right away." Duan Yuking waved her hand and looked anxiously at Kyohui. She had many questions to ask her, but now that Mu Yangling was here, she couldn't ask many questions, so she could only worry. Mu Yangling seemed to know what she was thinking, got up and said, "Since the girl is awake, take the medicine first and then rest. I will come to see you at night." Mu Yangling went out with the servants in the house, leaving them alone as master and servant. Duan Yuking breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "What's going on? Aren't we going to Bayun Temple? Why did we come to Rongjun Palace?" Kyohui sat on the edge of the bed and hugged her, and whispered in her ear, "Your Highness, be careful that the walls have ears." In a low voice, she briefly talked about the things in Bayun Temple and Jingshui Temple. Duan Yuking's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help covering her chest, and asked in a low voice, "Who did you say my pseudonym was?" "Master Wu Wu said that you are the daughter of General Wang." "Yes." Duan Yuking turned pale, "but she just called me Miss Duan." Kyohui's complexion also changed. She couldn't help but tighten her grip on Duan Yuking. Kyohui gritted her teeth, and said with hatred, "Treacherous villain, she even took advantage of her master's coma to do such a cunning thing." "Kyohui, can we leave?" Duan Yuking was terrified of being hunted down all the way, and now that she has fallen into the hands of the Daki royal family, she still doesn't know what will happen. "Your Highness," Kyohui said with reddened eyes, "your injury is too serious. Not to mention that they are now trapped in the general's mansion, and the dead soldiers are being imprisoned. Even if the dead soldiers are still there, they dare not escape. Duan Yuking's injury is too serious. If there is no good medicine, I'm afraid it will be." Kyohui hated her, and knelt down and said, "Your Highness, the princess is not a kind person. Since she lied to you, it means that she already doubted your identity. You didn't refute it just now. Now she has probably confirmed your identity. Since that's the case, it's better to confess and cooperate with Dachi." Duan Yuking lowered her eyes, bit her lips lightly, hesitating, "But, if she uses me to make a deal with Gao? If she thinks about it, the servant will protect His Highness to escape even if she dies. The most urgent thing is to heal your injury." Kyo Hui thought very clearly that if she wanted to escape, Duan Yuking's injuries had to be healed, otherwise fleeing would be tantamount to death. The current plan is to find a way to buy more time. Kyo Hui saw that she was still hesitating, so she whispered in her ear, "Your Highness, time is running out, we cannot help we hesitate any longer. You show your identity, as the princess of a country, you will get preferential treatment, the injury will definitely be better. Hurry up." Even if she has malicious thoughts, she must first notify the Emperor Daki, and then find a way to notify the Gao family in the country. During this period of time, when you recover from your injuries, the slaves will send you out immediately. After all, what they fight for is time, time to heal their injuries. Duan Yuking gritted her teeth and responded, "Then you go and invite the person here, and I will tell her in person." Kyo Hui was a little worried. Her Highness is innocent. She might not be the opponent of the treacherous princess, but she is only a servant girl, and she is indeed not qualified to talk to Mu Yangling. Kyo Hui gritted her teeth and fed Duan Yuking the medicine, then went to find Mu Yangling. I kept thinking along the way, where did they show their whereabouts? How could Mu Yangling suddenly guess their identities? Could it be that the dead betrayed them? No, it's impossible, those people have been trained, they won't betray their master, Kyo Hui guessed in her heart, while overthrowing them one by one. On the other side, Mu Yangling was excitedly saying to Li Shun, "Go and call Mr. Biao back immediately, and tell him that I have something important to tell him." Originally, it was just a random test, but it turned out to be the right one. Thanks to the various TV dramas in the previous life, Mu Yangling raised the corners of his mouth happily. She originally suspected that she was a member of the Wang family who disguised herself as a woman and escaped for her life. Later, she was confirmed to be a woman, so naturally she suspected that she was not a girl from the Wang family. Since it is not from the Wang family, whose family is it? The power of Dali is higher than that of the Wang family, and there are only a few families that can send so many dead soldiers. She originally suspected that it was the daughter of the Gao family or the Qin family. Regarding all the government affairs in Dali, she remembered Heiran said before that Dali had 2 rebellions in the past 3 years just against the Gao family's control of the government. He suspected that the frequent contact between Dali and Qianan was the Gao family's idea to divert domestic attention. But when she looked at the girl lying on the bed just now, she suddenly had a flash of inspiration and called her Miss Duan before she recovered. The surname Duan, in Dali, there is only one powerful family with the surname Duan, the Dali royal family. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 684. Before Mu Yangling could wait for Fan Zijin, Kyo Hui came to find him first. Mu Yangling raised his eyebrows and said, "Let your girl rest for a while, she hasn't eaten since she woke up, I'll go see her in the afternoon." Kyo Hui hesitated for a moment, then backed away. When Mu Yangling waited for Fan Zijin to come back, Fan Zijin said in astonishment, "You said she was Princess Duan." Mu Yangling nodded, "I guess." Fan Zijin frowned, "Why did Duan's princess escape to Daki? Could it be that Dali is in chaos? Heiran is still in Dali." Mu Yangling waved his hand without worrying at all, "Don't worry, he won't rush to find death, I will see her in a while, you just listen behind the screen and see what happened to Dali. Heiran is not in Qianan, I'm not worried about what happened to him, I'm worried about Qianan's frontier defense." Fan Zijin nodded, Lu Dehe was in the west camp, and Lin Man was in the east camp. These two people were okay, they could be regarded as Heeren's confidants, but the generals in the middle camp were always cautious and had to guard against them. When Mu Yangling went to see Duan Yuking woke up after a nap, so she drank medicine and ate something, so her face was not as pale as before. When she saw Mu Yangling, she got up and leaned on the pillow behind her, forcing he smiled and said, "Is the princess here?" Mu Yangling nodded slightly, and Li Shun moved a chair for her to sit in front of the bed. "Does Miss Wang feel better?" Duan Yuking smiled wryly, "Since the princess has already guessed my identity, why bother calling me Miss Wang?" Mu Yangling smiled and said, "I made a mistake and called Miss Wang earlier, so please don't mind." Duan Yuking shook her head slightly, "My concubine was not mistaken before, my surname is indeed Duan." Duan Yuking looked at Kyohui. Kyohui took out a piece of jade from her body and handed it to her respectfully, and Duan Yuking handed it to Mu Yangling. "This is the jade token of my Duan royal family." Mu Yangling took it over and saw that there was a 5-clawed auspicious dragon engraved on the front, and Duan's Yuking was engraved in small characters on the back. "You are Princess Dolly, so why did you escape here?" Duan Yuking looked at the jade card in Mu Yangling's hand, with reddish eye circles, and said, "The Gao family rebelled and forced the palace. I was sent out of the palace by my father in a hurry. I wanted to hide in Chongsheng Temple, but Chongsheng Temple also happened. In desperation, the elders of Chongsheng Temple had no choice but to send me to Baiyun Temple in Nanjian, but the Gao clan was powerful, and Baiyun Temple couldn't keep me, so they had to smuggle me to Daki, hoping to escape a gust of wind. Looking back, who would have expected Gao's rebellion to pursue and kill me all the way, and I was seriously injured. The princess also knows about what happened next. Gao's rebellion, is there no one to set things right?" Duan Yuking's complexion was a little ugly. She glanced at Kyohui, saw her blink, and sighed, "To tell you the truth, my Duan family has few heirs, and I was the only one in my father's life. There is also a cousin, although my cousin was sick and weak when he was young, but because he practiced martial arts at a young age, he is in good health. My father brought him into the palace to teach him personally. If there is no accident, he will be my next emperor in Dali. Unexpectedly, more than a month ago, my cousin went out to hunt, but suddenly fell off his horse and died. My father was in great grief, and at this moment Gao launched an attack." Mu Yangling's face was a little weird, and he said, "Hunting in late spring." Duan Yuking nodded again and again. "At the beginning, my father mentioned that the prey in late spring is fierce but thin, and it is not suitable for hunting, but my cousin insisted on going, and promised not to go deep into the mountains and forests, and only circle around, so my father agreed. But who knew something like this would happen?" Duan Yuking's misery just began. The heir whom Emperor Dali had cultivated for nearly 20 years died. He had no sons under him. Emperor Dali's health is not very good. He is 52 years old this year, and it will be difficult to retrain an heir. Emperor Dali originally wanted to choose a few larger teachings from the side branches, which could last for a few years, but before this idea had time to come up with it, Gao reversed it. If Duan Yuking's cousin is still there, and the Duan family still has a legitimate heir, it must be difficult for the Duan family to rebel, but now all the royal families directly related to the Duan family and closer to the blood are dead, and Duan Yuking is still a girl. So when the Gao family rebelled, everyone was not very firm in their resistance. After only 2 or 3 days, the Gao family's army rushed into the palace, and the Emperor of Dali only had time to send his daughter out. Let the eminent monks of the Chongsheng Temple set things right. Unexpectedly, there was also a rebellion in the Chongsheng Temple, and the whole country of Dali was in chaos. Duan Yuking could only run towards Daki. Kyohui and the others ran out protecting Duan Yuking, with the idea of contacting the courtiers to set things right, but when the Chongsheng Temple was in chaos, they had no such extravagance. They only hoped to preserve the blood of the royal family so that the Duan family would not be cut off. Chongshen Temple, the state religion of Dali, the place where successive kings of Dali and patriarchs of the Duan family became monks in their later years. The Duan family respected Buddhism very much. In addition, the kings of Dali, King Geniz, and the patriarch of the Duan family all became monks in Chongshen Temple to study Buddhism in their later years. It also guarantees the responsibility to set things right. In the past, there were perverse people in the royal family, and Chongshen Temple came forward to mediate or solve them. So when there was a rebellion this time, the Emperor Dali would send his daughter to Chongshen Temple, but who would have thought that there would be chaos in Chongshen Temple? The backing and faith collapsed at the same time, and Duan Yuking and others panicked. They could only flee to Qianan with the people from Baiyun Temple in Nanjian. Keeping Duan's bloodline is what Duan Yuking thinks too, because she knows that she has no ability to go back and set things right, so she can only try to live as long as possible to continue Duan's bloodline, hoping that her child can return to Dali in 20 years. Back to Chongshen Temple. Duan Yuking and Mu Yangling explained this in detail, and there was only one request, that is, they hoped that Mu Yangling could save her life and let her live in Qianan and have children. Mu Yangling looked at Duan Yuking with sympathy. She turned her head to look at Kyohui, but Kyohui looked at her beggingly. Mu Yangling sighed in her heart and didn't tell Duan Yuking that she hurt her uterus. There will be no children. Mu Yangling dodged Duan Yuking's pleading eyes. She pondered, Princess Duan, I can't give you an answer now, this matter is very important, I have to report to the Holy Spirit. Seeing her gloomy face, she hurriedly said, but I will work hard for you. During this period of time, you should rest at ease and recuperate first. Don't worry, if you stay here for 1 day, I will keep you safe for 1 day. Duan Yuking twitched the corners of her mouth and said with a forced smile, thank you, Princess Chi. Mu Yangling nodded slightly to Kyohui, signaling her to take good care of Duan Yuking, and got up to leave. Tears filled Duan Yuking's eyelashes, and said, Kyohui, Princess Chi refuses to agree to us, we're just afraid. Chiao Hui was very happy, and said, Your Highness, Princess Chi is the best, if she agrees, the slaves will be afraid that she has ulterior motives. If she tells the truth, she will speak well for us in front of the Emperor De Qi. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 685. Knowing Duan Yuking's identity, both Mu Yangling and Fan Zijin felt a heavy weight in their hearts. Although Dali is small and their strength has always been small, they did not dare to ignore it. They quickly wrote 600 miles of urgent documents to send to the capital. Go. After the documents were sent out, Fan Zijin had the leisure to stir up crooked thoughts. If Duan Yuking's complaint is true, Dali must be in chaos at this time. The Gao clan is powerful, and it is only a matter of time before the domestic chaos is quelled. Before that, they had plotted against Qianan. Once the Gao clan gained power, the two countries could not afford a war. The usual small friction will certainly not be less. The most important thing is that Heiran has always had plans for Dali, otherwise he would not go to Dali himself this time. If he collides with the powerful Gao family, sooner or later a war will happen. Now Fan Zijin saw a scene of war in front of him. He was not afraid of war, but he was a little worried about logistics. He was not capable of providing combat preparations for the army, so it would be best to resolve it peacefully. Originally, Fan Zijin wanted to use his status as a big cousin to expand his business to prepare for future wars, but now the arrival of Princess Dali has opened up a way for him. Princess Dali is a double-edged sword. If it is not used well, it will only give Gao an excuse to start a war and advance the war between the two countries. But if it is used well, they may be able to take Dali without a single soldier. incorporated into Daki to reproduce the glory of Emperor Shizong of the Great Zhou dynasty. These are just fleeting thoughts, and the matter is confidential. It is not easy for him to discuss it with his staff, so Fan Zijian consulted with Mu Yangling. I would like to ask the emperor to marry Princess Dolly at a discount, so that her identity can be put on the table. On the bright side, Gao's excuse for questioning has been broken, and their perverse actions have been known to the world. The words were very righteous, but Mu Yangling only heard the first and most critical point. She widened her eyes and asked, "What about the queen and Xiaobao?" Fan Zijian rolled his eyes and said, "The emperor's harem, the 3 palaces, the 6 courts and the 72 concubines, he has only conferred 1 queen. Dali is just a small country, and 1 concubine is enough. The key is, do you think the 2 sides are married? How likely are we to take Dali peacefully?" Fan Zijian's purpose was nakedly exposed to Mu Yangling. Mu Yangling was speechless for a while, before saying quietly after a long time, looking at the influence of the Duan clan in Dali, "If Duan Yuking is willing and able to command the Duan clan's influence in Dali, then it shouldn't be a problem to regain Dali. Dali has always been a vassal state of the Central Plains, so it has a sense of belonging to the Central Plains, and it will not be more hostile to the Central Plains like Jurchen and others." In addition, Emperor Sejong of the Dezhou had merged Dali into the Dezhou and changed it to Dali County. In fact, Dali was only a state and county in the Tang dynasty, and it was not until the later Tang dynasty that the Duan family separated it and became an independent country of Dali. It has only been more than 20 years since Dali was separated from Dazhu. Now there must be many people in Dali who remember the unified Dazhu. It is very feasible to merge Dali into the Central Plains again. Mu Yangling's thoughts changed, and he also had a crooked thought, saying, "If you can't do it, you will ruin the reputation of the Gao family. The Duan family is not only the royal family of Dali, but also the pillar of the Chongsheng Temple, and the Chongsheng Temple belongs to the Dali kingdom. The state religion has countless believers. Gao Shi hunted down and killed Princess Dali and spread the word. Those politicians who weighed interests can ignore it, and I am afraid that no one among ordinary people will stand on Gao Shi's side." "That's right," Fan Zijian said with a boxing fist, "although the Duan family is weak, there are advantages to being weak. Since the Duan family was separated from Dazhu, their taxes have always been relatively light, and they are very popular among the people. Although the Gao family is powerful, but the reputation is much worse, if we add another fire to this." Fan Zijian smiled and said, "Their princess married the emperor, and we will go to the frontier again. Even if the dignitaries in Dali were originally on the side of the Gao family, they have to reconsider at this time. Heiran, let him come back quickly." Mu Yangling frowned slightly. "We haven't asked Duan Yuking what he means." Seeing that she was worried about Duan Yuking, Fan Zijian was unhappy and said, "Aling, don't forget which country you are from, and this is the best ending for Princess Dali, otherwise, she will be in our hands, or she will be reduced to us the bargaining chip with the Gao family, or being sent back to Dali as a puppet to fight with the Gao family. No matter which one is, with her current injuries, she will die soon, but entering the harem of the big cousin is different. The queen is virtuous, and she will treat her well only because she is the princess of Dali. The living environment is good, at least she will not die early, and maybe she is lucky enough to give birth to a grandson of the Duan family who has royal blood. The direct lineage of the clan has been passed down." Mu Yangling was silent, and Fan Zijian warned her, "Don't send people away with mercy, and ruin a good deck of cards." Mu Yangling glared at him angrily, "Am I the kind of person who doesn't care about my family and country? But don't think about passing on Duan's bloodline. She was seriously injured, her uterus was injured, and she will never have children again." Fan Zijian was surprised, "It's so serious?" Mu Yangling nodded slightly, and said in a deep voice, "Contact Heiran first, and ask him about the situation on his side. I will persuade Duan Yuking." At this time, Chi Heiran, who was missed by the two of them, had just followed the motorcade from Bisha Miao village to Dali through southern Guizhou. The Ming passerby who came to pick up the motorcade glanced at the motorcade and asked Sang Linji suspiciously, "Third Prince? What happened this time, are you coming?" Sang Linzhong has always been in charge of the transactions between them. Although he also knows Sang Linji exists as a deputy most of the time. This is the first time he has come forward as the person in charge. Sang Linji explained with an unchanged expression, "My second brother is busy with affairs, so I will be responsible for all future transactions with Dali." Ming Luren rolled his eyes and asked, "I wonder how Chief Sanglin is doing recently?" Sang Linji's eyes darkened, and he said, "My father is still in good health, thank you for your concern." But Ming Luren still noticed the change in Sang Linji's eyes, smiled slightly, turned around and asked people to ask the people in Miao village about Chief Sang Linji's physical condition. Chief Sang Lin's health is indeed not in good condition. Since meeting Chi Heiran, his energy and spirit seem to have been drained at once, and his health has declined rapidly. He is very dissatisfied with Sang Linzhong's arrogance and self-assertion recently. He was locked in the main building where he worked, and he was not allowed to go out easily. These news are naturally closed, so the Miao people in the Miao village only know that the second prince lives in the main building recently, and the chief's health is getting worse and worse, and he often sees the Miao doctor recently. The people of Mingla got the news and finally came to the conclusion that Chief Sanglin might not be in good health, and the position of chief may be passed on to the second prince, Sang Linzhong. That's why Sang Linzhong moved into the main building, and the transaction was handed over to the second prince. Sang Linji is in charge. Although Ming Luren is only a guide, he is not lacking in observation and knowledge. After he came to this conclusion, he did not neglect Sang Linji. After all, Sang Linzhong will not be able to take charge of this in the future if he wants to become a chief. Well, since Sang Linji came in person this time, I'm afraid that this aspect will be handed over to Sang Linji in the future. It's better for the county magistrate to take care of it now. Thinking about it this way, people from Minglu became more polite to Sang Linji. And Chi Heiran has been mixed in the convoy, riding down the route calmly. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 686. They walked all the way through small paths, but there were 5 secret checkpoints. Chi Heiran felt something was wrong, so he walked up to Sang Linji calmly and asked in a low voice, "Every time you come, you have to go through so many checkpoints level?" Sang Linji was also in doubt, and replied in a low voice, "In the past, there were only 3 checkpoints, and they were very lax. As long as there are clear passers-by leading the team, there is almost no need for inspection." Sang Linji was a little uneasy, worried that they would be discovered by someone. This is not Daki, no matter how powerful Chi Heiran is, there is nothing he can do. Once discovered, more than 100 of them will not be able to protect Chi Heiran. "Don't be nervous, relax," Chi Heiran reminded him in a low voice when he saw his back was stiff. "It should not be discovered, but something happened in Dali. Those people set up checkpoints mainly to check whether their goods are carrying other things, and to prohibit them from walking around. It is only a short half-day journey. Minglu people have reminded them 4 times not to walk around or leave the convoy. Obviously they are guarding against them. They don't want people to know about Dali." Chi Heiran's eyes were full of brilliance. He was not afraid of something happening in Dali, but he was afraid that it would not happen. Only when something happened would they have the opportunity to take advantage of it. "Third Prince, we'll be there in half an hour." Minglu rode up to the third prince and said with a smile. Chi Heiran took 2 steps back slightly, lowered his head, and looked no different from Sang Linji's other guards. Ming Luren didn't notice him at all, and just looked at Sang Linji seriously. It was only then that Sang Linji noticed that this road seemed to be different from the ones he had walked before. Although it looked similar in general, if he didn't pay attention, he hardly noticed the difference. Sang Linji's face was a little ugly, and he asked, "You changed the location, why didn't you inform me in advance?" Ming Luren smiled indifferently and said, "Third Prince, don't mind, we also changed the location for the sake of safety, but although the location has changed, the distance is not far away." "You mean our deal was discovered?" No, don't worry, Third Prince. We just changed places as usual, and there is nothing unusual. Besides, with the power of my master, no one will dare to say anything even if they find out." Sang Linji didn't speak now, but he was still very upset. As Chi Heiran's guide, he didn't notice it after the change of route, and he needed to be informed by people from Dali, and he didn't know about this prince. Will it be blamed on him? Next, Sang Linji began to pay attention to the route carefully, but found that he could remember it at first, but when he thought about it after a certain period of time, he found that there was only one road in his mind. Look at Chi Heiran's impulse. Chi Heiran lowered his head, without much expression on his face, but in fact he was a little dignified in his heart. He also noticed something abnormal on the road. He carefully recalled the road he had traveled, and his face became more serious. It wasn't that they couldn't remember the way, but rather, the scenery and signs on the road appear almost regularly, which makes them feel that they have been moving forward, but when they look back, they feel that the road they have traveled has no characteristics, and it seems that they have been walking for a while. The setting of the intersection should also be deliberate, and it coincides with a certain gossip formation, which makes them unable to remember the direction and intersection they turned when they recalled. It's just that the smuggling with Kainan is necessary to be so solemn? Or are these terrains formed naturally? Chi Heiran quietly observed the surrounding mountains and terrain, and half an hour later, they turned into a valley, and it suddenly became clear to them that there were tents arranged in a row in front of them, and there were roadblocks at the entrance of the valley, and soldiers were standing there. Guards, while soldiers patrolling around and inside the valley with knives. This is entirely the army stationed. Where is the smuggled caravan? Chi Heiran looked at Sang Linji, and saw that his face had also sunk into the water, and his heart sank. Sang Linji held the reins tightly, reined in the horse, and asked Ming Luren dissatisfiedly, "What do you mean? The previous transactions were not like this. You actually let the army participate." Ming Lu said with a smile, "Third Prince, don't be nervous. These are our master's people. Recently, bandits have been rampant in this area. Our master sent soldiers to protect the caravan out of consideration for the safety of the caravan. Don't worry, they are only responsible for our caravan. Safe, never partake of our transactions, what we were, and what we are." As if to verify the words of passers-by, a middle-aged man in the valley led the two of them out. When he saw Sang Linji, he greeted them with a smile on his face, and said with fists, "Is it the third prince of the Bisha tribe? It's a pleasure to meet you, but I finally got you here." Sang Linji saw that the middle-aged man's expression softened slightly, and he rode back on the horse and said, "It turned out to be the third owner's family, but you are in charge this time. But this welcome ceremony is too special." Sang Linji looked at the camp area unceremoniously. The third family hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, "It's all unavoidable, the third prince, forgive me, knowing that you are leading the team this time, I specially brought high-quality rice wine from Dali, and I am waiting for you to have a good time with you when you come apologize." Sang Linji curled his lips, although he was still dissatisfied, but everyone had come here, so it was impossible to turn around and leave, so he could only wave his hand to let the convoy enter the valley. Only when you go in do you know how big it is inside. From the outside looking in, you feel that the camp area is occupied by white tents, but after entering, you find that there is a big gap between the tents, and there are many cars parked inside. Covered with sackcloth, it is obvious that another convoy has arrived. Sang Linji was discussing business with Sandong's family. As a small guard, Chi Heiran was not qualified to follow, so he could only go with the convoy to arrange the goods they brought. There were soldiers patrolling around them, although they were not straight. He stared at them closely, but the people Chi Heiran brought were all scouts, so it was natural to find that they were all being watched now. Two people approached Chi Heiran calmly, and Chi Heiran said in a low voice, "Let people disperse, find a way to look at the goods of other caravans, see if we can draw the topographic map and defense map of the valley, pick up the baggage and main road painting." The two agreed in a low voice, then turned around and carried a bag of goods from the cart to the warehouse of the Bisha Miao village. The rest of the goods that were not suitable for disassembly were left on the carriage and guarded by their Miao village people. Chi Heiran's eyes slid over the people present. After a group of soldiers patrolled here again, he blinked, and he appeared behind a tent, and sneaked towards the main tent. When he was a teenager, when he set up his own camp for the first time as a general, he made a simplified one based on the Western camp. Later, it took a Ling less than a quarter of an hour to sneak into his main camp. Assassination and anti-assassination, infiltration and anti-infiltration, used to be the most and best game he played with Aling. Therefore, his defense is the most stringent in the whole army, and the most invincible. Similarly, his infiltration ability is also the best. It should not be underestimated, but it was useless in the past, but this time he can try his skills. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 687. General Gao ordered me to wait here and wait for orders. We only need to obey orders. Why do we need to do unnecessary things? But General, this matter is the time to make contributions. After a while, the world will be calmed down. Where can we use our talents? There was a moment of silence in the tent, and the persuasive voice said again, "General, although General Gao has lofty ambitions and the arrogance to dominate the world, he is far inferior to Duans in terms of benevolence and righteousness. If we can't take this opportunity to accumulate military merits, the Gao family may not be able to tolerate us. You must know that the Gao family is not as weak as the Duan family's descendants. Our shelter. Then what do you do? Now we are ordered to wait quietly. If General Gao finds out that we have acted recklessly, even if we have made great military achievements, the general will make us do more than we do if we don't listen to orders. So we have to play it by ear, so that we can accumulate military merits and not let go of the conversation. The general and his subordinates have been given secret protection. Her Royal Highness has fled to Kainan. This time we are responsible for protecting the smuggling with Kainan. You said, if we routinely send someone to escort the Miao caravan into Kainan, and then secretly visit the whereabouts of the eldest princess, General, we are only ordered to protect the trade between the two sides, and we want to do things better, but we happen to meet the eldest princess who is fleeing. They can all go round, and the Duan family only has the eldest princess bloodline left now. Once she is arrested, those who resist because of the Duan family will definitely give in. Do you think this military merit is great? The emperor is still in Chongsheng Temple. The emperor is 52, and he couldn't have a son before, and now he can't. If the emperor's health is not getting weaker, and His Highness the Crown Prince happened to fall off his horse and died, do you think General Gao will turn against him? Hearing this, Chi Heiran's eyes darkened. He backed away quietly, and stopped eavesdropping. He avoided the sight of the patrolling soldiers and returned to the convoy. Sang Linji was sitting in the tent sweating profusely. Crying loudly, he excitedly stepped forward and grabbed Chi Heiran's hand. "Where have you been?" Sang Linji broke into a cold sweat without seeing Chi Heiran when he came back. He was afraid that something would happen to him. As a result, he waited for nearly an hour, and Chi Heiran's men came back, and he was nowhere to be seen. Seeing that it was almost nightfall, people from Dali are coming to do statistics, how can he not be in a hurry? Chi Heiran bent slightly, did not speak, but held Sang Linji with his backhand, and after helping him into the tent, Chi Heiran let go, and said in a low voice, "It's okay, don't be nervous." Sang Linji was still sweating coldly on his forehead, but his beating heart felt better. He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said in a low voice, "Dolly said that the deal will be made tomorrow, and we can leave the day after tomorrow." The third family stayed at the guest, and said that they would have a batch of military supplies in 2 days, and then they could do business again. He originally thought that the money they exchanged would be exchanged for food anyway, since it would be cheaper for the Sandong family to resell the military food. They would naturally be willing to stay for 2 more days, anyway, they used to do this before, but now he changed his mind. He felt that if he stayed here for another 2 days, he would die early. He would definitely. Who let him be such a prince this time? Sang Linji thought about it for a while and went to the third family to tell them that they would not stay any longer, and they would leave as soon as they got the money. But Chi Heiran knocked on the table and said, "Go and tell Sandong's family that you still have something to do in Miao village. We will finish the transaction as soon as possible tomorrow, and we will leave in the afternoon." This, Sang Linji was taken aback, and asked, "Are you in a hurry?" Chi Heiran glanced at him, and said, "You have a big heart, and you can sleep peacefully in the encirclement of others. We should leave early, don't worry, that third owner will not stay, but you have to pay attention. If he says if you want to send someone to escort you back to Canaan, you must not agree to them." "Why would they want to escort us back to Canaan?" Sang Linji asked suspiciously. Chi Heiran smiled slightly and said, "You just need to remember. It is true that the Sandong family only kept Sang Linji for a while, and obviously knew that everyone could not stay at ease when they were all Dolly soldiers. In the past, everyone traded in caravans, and there were people from various tribal companies, and everyone was evenly matched. There has never been a case of forced buying, forced selling, or forced retention of customers. This time the incident happened suddenly. If they want to continue this business in the future, they cannot force retention of customers." But just as Chi Heiran expected, the other party proposed that they escort them back to Canaan, because Chi Heiran had reminded him in advance that although he was surprised, he hadn't lost his composure, so he refused after thinking about it for a while. He hinted that he could offer some discounts in future business, but he didn't respond. This time without Chi Heiran's reminder, Sang Linji also noticed that something was wrong, and when he came back at night, he asked people to step up vigilance and was not allowed to go out casually, and hurriedly led the team away after the transaction the next day. The third family stood at the entrance of the valley and squinted their eyes to send them off. Someone behind him whispered, "Just send them away like this. Bisha Miao village has been cooperating with us for almost 10 years. I know them well." The 2 sons of Chief Sanglin died at the hands of the Han people. The Sandong family stroked their beards and said with a smile, "But this Sanglin season is comparable to his. The second brother is even stronger, he is willing to give up the benefits we promised and get away early." Chi Heiran didn't go back with Sang Linji. After entering Canaan and the Ming passers-by left, Chi Heiran stopped and said to Sang Linji, "You go first." Sang Linji knew that Chi Heiran was going to leave the convoy and enter Dali again. He hesitated for a while, but still didn't ask anything, nodded and said, "My lord, take care." Chi Heiran nodded slightly, and handed him a letter. "When you return to Juzhu, hand this letter to the princess for me." Chi Heiran didn't stay any longer, and re-entered Dali from another mountain pass with 7 guards. He glanced in the direction of the valley and saw only a stretch of mountains. Chi Heiran turned his horse's head and said, let's go to Chong Holy Temple." "My lord, are you going to Chongsheng Temple at this time?" Chi Heiran nodded. "Dali is too busy to take care of himself now, so we can't offend Daki, but if we can make this trickle more muddy, it would be great if Gao wouldn't miss us." Chi Heiran was slightly regretful. It would be great if the Duan family had a descendant. It is better for the Duan family to be an emperor than the powerful Gao family. I learned from Bisha Miao village that most of the smuggling with the Miao village is supported by the Gao family. They not only do smuggling business with the Miao village in Qianan, but also often inquire about the mineral deposits in Qianan like them, and from time to time provoke them to cooperate with the Miao village. Regarding the relationship between the Han people, Sang Linzong's heart is to let them provoke and float. After all, Qi Heiran was not familiar with Dali, and he had to avoid the Dali army that appeared from time to time, so he walked a lot of wrong roads to reach Chongshen Temple. The advantage is that the maps they drew are much more detailed. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 688. All the inside and outside of Chongshen Temple were under martial law. Gao's army had surrounded Chongshen Temple. Qi Heiran mixed in the crowd to admire the majestic temple of Chongshen Temple. Now even ordinary people know that Gao's wants to take Duans instead. Of course, the Gao family also had a good reason to arrest the murderers who murdered the prince, the queen and the eldest princess. Regardless of whether everyone believes it or not, the Gao family has found a very righteous and noble reason to rebel. The Prince of Dali is the nephew of the emperor and the cousin of the eldest princess. He was brought up in the palace since he was a child. When the eldest princess Jiji, that is, last year, the emperor officially canonized him as the prince, but within a year, the prince fell off his horse and died. Before the prince's funeral, General Gao led his soldiers to storm the palace and demanded that the emperor hand over the eldest princess and queen who murdered the prince. The eldest princess disappeared, and the emperor and queen took refuge in Chongshen Temple under the protection of the guards. Gao Shi vowed to seek justice for the prince, but ordinary people knew that this was just an excuse for Gao Shi. There is no such thing as a queen in Dali. The eldest princess and the prince grew up together, and their relationship has always been very good, and there is no conflict of interest. Why did the eldest princess harm the prince when she was so good? However, Mrs. Gao has personal and physical evidence in hand. There are letters from the eldest princess colluding with the guards around the prince, and the confession of the killer who was appointed by the eldest princess to murder the prince. Let alone the chaotic people at that time, it was too late to identify the authenticity of these things. Now the situation was stalemate, and the two sides sent people to identify the authenticity, but they couldn't tell the reason, because these could be forged. Now that the Gao family surrounded the Chongshen Temple to ask the emperor to hand over the queen, the emperor would naturally not agree. Even if all the ministers were kneeling on the ground, the emperor would remain silent, resolutely not letting anyone take the queen away. It's not that he has deep affection for the queen, but he knows that arresting the queen is just an excuse for them. If he handed over the queen, Gao's next target will be him and the eldest princess. The daughter is the bottom line of the emperor, and Gao has already touched his line. The two sides are in a dead end. He can only delay the time as much as possible to let his daughter have more time to escape. The queen is a tool to delay time. 2. The queen obviously knew this too, so for the safety of her daughter, she has been careful to save her own life for the past few days, hoping to delay it for a little longer. When the emperor staggered in on crutches, what he saw was the queen kneeling down to worship the Buddha devoutly. He looked up at the merciful Bodhisattva and sighed slightly. When the queen heard the movement, she hurriedly turned around. "Your Majesty, what did the presiding master say? Are the elders willing to see us?" The emperor shook his head slightly. "The elders are all old, and they can't retreat. The host has passed the letter inside, but it's not easy to ask now." The queen's eyes were slightly red, and she said, "Yes, this is Duan's family." The emperor sighed and shook his head slightly. The Duan family has always been the person in power in Dali. When Dali was an independent country, the Duan family was the emperor. When Dali was a prefecture, the Duan family was the king of genies who was entrusted to the imperial court. The last time Dali was separated from Das, who was his father. At that time, their brothers had already been fighting for the title of Genies king. Once his father separated Dali into an independent country, the fighting became more intense. When he finally came to the throne, his father became one of the few Dali emperors and Genies kings who did not go to Chongsheng Temple to be ordained, because he died of illness only 5 days after he abdicated. The Duan family has always lived a long life, especially King Genies, who is willing to shave his head and enter Chongsheng Temple to practice. For example, his grandfather and great-grandfather are still alive today. Still built on. But it seems that it is God's retribution for running away to fight for the throne with blood on his hands. His brothers died in the struggle, and their children were implicated. I have only one daughter in my life. It is also because of this that in these years, he has widely implemented benevolent government and reduced taxes many times, just to accumulate more merits so that the only 2 remaining bloodlines can grow up safely. He had already chosen to abdicate to the crown prince at the age of 55, but who knew that such a thing would happen suddenly? The emperor felt that this was really retribution when he was young. He didn't know if the elders thought the same way, so he refused to come out to see him. Can't go against him. But the monks are outside the world of mortals. Even if there were several incidents in the history of Chongsheng Temple that helped Duan to set things right, he is not sure that Chongsheng Temple is willing to stand up for him at this time. After all, his daughter is in Chongsheng Temple. Temple was sent away. Chongsheng Temple has the duty to protect Duan's bloodline, but because the eldest princess is a daughter, not a son, Chongsheng Temple refused to do its best to protect it. The emperor was very annoyed, and naturally he didn't have much affection for those elders who had never shown up. And expectations. The couple joined hands and knelt before the Buddha, earnestly praying for the safety and happiness of their daughter. At this time, Chi Heiran, who wanted to sneak into Chongsheng Temple, was staring at the person in his hand with a livid face, and ordered Fei Bai with a black face, "Go and find out who this person is." Fei Bai heard someone coming this way. He responded anxiously and said, "Master, let's go quickly, otherwise it will be too late." Chi Heiran nodded, and stretched out his hand to throw away the person in his hand. After thinking about it, he was not cruel enough, and ran away with him. Even if several of them were good at martial arts, everyone was chased hard enough, especially Chi Heiran's hand. He also brought an injured and unconscious person with him. He wanted to throw him away several times, but he felt that the possibility of escaping was quite high, and he didn't want to take his life on his back in a daze, so Chi Heiran carried him away like this. To a ruined temple. Fei Bai came up from behind sweating profusely and said, "Master, you got thrown off." Only then did Chi Heiran drop the person in his hand, and ordered his subordinates, treat his wound, and ask him about his identity after he wakes up. Fei Bai, take people to Chongsheng Temple again tomorrow to see how their defenses have changed. We have to find time to sneak into the temple again. Master, this time we alerted the guards, it will be too difficult and too dangerous to get in again. Chi Heiran said, "Try again, if it doesn't work, we will withdraw." He originally went there with the attitude of giving it a try. It would be great if he could see the Emperor of Dali. The people of the Holy Temple attracted the guards. They had to retreat temporarily. Chi Heiran ordered to come over to look at the person who had been wrapped like a zongzi, and asked, "How is it? Will he die?" The guard who bandaged the wounded wiped his sweat and said, "Master Hui, he probably won't die. Although this man has many injuries, they are not fatal. He fainted because he lost too much blood. Now that the bleeding has stopped, give him another, he should be able to wake up after injecting some blood replenishing things." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 689. Fei Bai can't get close to Chongsheng Temple at all, and now the whole 5-mile radius of Chongsheng Temple is under martial law, and the tenants and villagers living in this area are all imprisoned. Fei Bai feels wrong. Even if they alarm the Chongsheng Temple guard, their reaction is too much, right? There is no reason to make such a big move just for a few people who don't know what the purpose is, right? Fei Bai thought for a while and managed to bribe a patrolling ordinary soldier with a guard. Only then did he realize that someone forced his way into the Chongsheng Temple yesterday. Since the rebellion, Chongsheng Temple, which has been quiet since the rebellion, suddenly opened the gate and demanded that the people from the Gao family hand over those who broke in. People on both sides even handed over their hands. Still strongly demanded that Gao's people hand over the body. No amount of things can be known by an ordinary soldier. Fei Bai went back to find Qi Heiran with the news. Qi Heiran squinted his eyes. Emperor Dali went to Chongsheng Temple, but Chongsheng Temple didn't come forward, just to protect his and the queen's life, but now go to grab some corpses. Fei Bai nodded. I also think it's strange, but it's a pity that the Gao family is heavily guarded now, and it took a lot of effort to pry the soldier's mouth open this time, and the man was just an ordinary guard, and he couldn't find out more gone. Qi Heiran turned his head to look at the zongzi lying on the haystack, raised his chin and asked, has his identity been found out? Fei Bai shook his head, not only couldn't find out, but also had no news at all. After all, this is not Daki, and many things are inconvenient. In Daki, they can go to the Yamen to consult any classics and documents, and they can also visit and investigate openly. It is easy to find someone, but in Dali, they have to cover up identity. This person is very clean, except for a face, there is nothing that can indicate his identity. So he walked around and secretly asked people around Chongsheng Temple, but no one had seen him. Qi Heiran's heart skipped a beat, and he asked, you said you have inquired about his identity? Yes, because he also wanted to break into the Chongsheng Temple, so I thought he might have lived near there, so I went to inquire, but no one has seen him. Qi Heiran lowered his eyes in thought, stood up suddenly, and said, pack up your things immediately, we will leave immediately. Although Fei Bai and the others were surprised, they packed up immediately, erased all traces, lifted the zongzi and quickly left the ruined temple. Qi Heiran paused at the fork in the road, and immediately pointed to the mountain forest on the other side of the river. Let's cross the river and enter the mountain. A group of people crossed the river carefully, erased the traces and went into the mountain. And not long after they left the ruined temple, a group of soldiers broke into the door. Gao Yuan stared at the pile of straw on the ground sullenly, and asked, how? The leading scout hesitated for a moment and said, there are no traces of people staying here. Most of the traces were erased by people, but the traces can be erased, but the smell cannot be erased. General, there are a few hounds in our army that are very useful, not as good as the general. After a while, we went back and fetched the hound. Gao Yuan frowned. How much time will this take? Sharpening knives does not miss woodcutters. General, we can't find any trace of them now, and we can't find their way even if we try to chase them. Gao Yuan was a little irritable, and waved his hand, then asked someone to pick it up. I'll wait here. Gao Yuan walked back and forth in the ruined temple twice, and asked the deputy beside him, you can't see any trace? The deputy looked around the temple, shook his head slightly, and said, I can see the traces of people living there, but I really want to look for them, but I find that those traces are very ordinary, left by beggars or passers-by. Gao Yuan snorted coldly, and said, this is really scary. It seems to be there, but there is no trace of value. Gao Yuan waited for nearly 3/4 of an hour with a cold face before the hound was brought in. The hound walked on the ground for a long time. Gao Yuan pointed to the pile of straw on the ground and said, let it smell that pile of straw. He always felt that the pile of straw was too natural, as if no one had ever sat and lay down before, but if he was the other party, and he came to the ruined temple to settle down, and there were no chairs and places to rest. The pile of straw was obviously the best choice, so that pile of straw should be where the most smell remains. But Gao Yuan didn't know that, he only guessed. The pile of straw was indeed used by someone. If there were no wounded, the pile of straw must be Chi Heiran's territory. Glancing at him there, he turned and left. And other people will not take the initiative to approach people whose enemies and friends are unknown and who are hated by the master. Therefore, apart from the person who bandaged the rice dumplings with medicine, the smell of the wounded is left on the haystack, and the smell of Chinese medicine also accounts for the smell. For the most part, the seemingly invisible smell belonging to Chi Heiran was put at the end of the list by the hounds. The hound is very smart, and chased after the strongest smell, and soon reached the river, but after crossing the river, the smell became much weaker. The hound took a long time to sniff before entering the mountain forest. Turn around, and finally go back to the lower reaches of the river, and after crossing the river, go into the mountains, turn around and come out again to reach the lower reaches of the river, and cross the river. Gao Yuan's face was ashen. At this time, no matter how stupid he was, he knew that he was being played by someone. He was so angry that he kicked the scout who was leading the hound and flew out, angrily said, "Useless things, come here, go to the front of the army, come on, surround this mountain, even if you dig 3 feet, you have to find someone for me." The people behind looked at each other, and could not help but persuade in a low voice, "General, keep this matter low-key. Besides, our army is now going to suppress the rebellion and encircle the Chongshen temple, and there are not many people left. General, why don't we send 2 teams of elite soldiers to pursue them, each with 2 hounds, even if they can make a detour, our 2 teams exchange strength, can't we catch up with them?" After thinking about it, Gao Yuan agreed, with haze in his eyes, and said in a low voice, "I didn't expect that there was such a capable person by his side, no wonder he was able to escape." At this time, Chi Heiran and the others were already so tired that they collapsed on the ground. Fei Bai poked the Zongzi who was still sleeping, and sighed, "It's better for him to lie comfortably all the way here. Fourth master, how many turns do you have to make?" Chi Heiran squinted his eyes and asked, "There's no need to make a detour, there is a village down the river, let's find something to cover up the smell." Chi Heiran looked at the person lying down, and said, "I don't know who this person is, but luck is good, there is a river not far away, otherwise we may not be able to get rid of the person behind." A group of them brought a wounded man. Although they could erase the traces from people's eyes, they would not be able to hide from the noses of hounds. He walked to the river and remembered that Fei Bai said that everyone within a 5-mile radius of Chongshen Temple had been arrested. Since the other side attaches so much importance to the people who want to break into the Chongshen Temple, they will definitely not give up on them who have leaked their tracks easily, so Chi Heiran wants to use this river to weaken the smell and ask the follower. Although this method is useful, it is cumbersome and the effect is slow. If the opponent sends out a large number of troops cruelly, they will have nowhere to hide. At that time, I am afraid that they will really enter the mountain forest. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 690. As soon as Duan Saiwen opened his eyes, he met Chi Heiran's eyes. He was taken aback for a moment, then his complexion changed drastically, and he subconsciously looked around. "Looking for your guards," Chi Heiran said, "they are all dead." Duan Saiwen's face was pale, pain flashed in his eyes, and he asked, "Who are you?" "It should be you who told us your identity first." Chi Heiran raised his head to signal him to look outside, and said, "Did you see that the torches stretching up from the bottom of the mountain are all people looking for you, and we are carrying you on our backs today? It's come a long way." Duan Saiwen is silent. He knows what the other party means. If he is not worth enough, these people will definitely hand him over, but because of this, he dare not tell them his identity, because too much identity means it's a huge credit. He has no power to restrain the chicken now, and he doesn't want to bet on whether they can survive this temptation at a low level. Chi Heiran didn't make things difficult for him, but just sat aside and waited for him to choose. Duan Siwen is sad, this is almost a must-death ending. After a long time, Fei Bai came over in the dark, and said with a sneer, "Do you really think you are someone? Our Lord is not so rare. Saving you is just a matter of convenience. You must know that you can cause us such a big trouble. We must not hold hands easily, people." Prince. How can there be a prince in Dali? Or the master surnamed Wang? Duan Siwen's heart was beating wildly. Fei Bai had already touched Chi Heiran's side, and seemed to be sure that Duan Siwen was not threatening, and reported without any taboo, "Master, the princess sent a message. The eldest princess of Dali fled to Canaan and was rescued by the princess. She let you go back quickly. The Gao family is eyeing Canaan. Since the eldest princess lived in the mansion, there have been more assassins." Duan Siwen only felt dry mouth, looked up at Chi Heiran, but saw him frown slightly, and said, "We can't see the Emperor Dali, and now the princess is charged with murdering the Prince of Dali, so she keeps her for us. What is the benefit?" Chi Heiran waved his hand indifferently and said, "Reply to the princess and ask her to send him to the capital for the imperial court to deal with. There is a young son in the palace now, don't let the assassin disturb him." Fei Bai responded, and was about to retreat. Duan Siwen couldn't help but said, "Wait a minute." Everyone looked at him. Duan Siwen didn't know if this was a trap, but he knew that once the eldest princess was sent to the capital, she would either be killed by Gao's men on the way, or be used by Da Qi to trade with Gao, or be used by Da Qi. Qi was used as a puppet against Gao. Duan Siwen lowered his eyes and pondered for a moment, then raised his head to look at Chi Heiran, and said affirmatively, "Great King Rong of Qi." Chi Heiran just smiled and said nothing. Duan Siwen took a deep breath, and couldn't help admiring his courage. He dared to bring such a small number of people to Dali at this time. Thoughts in Duan Siwen's mind turned sharply, but for a moment, many thoughts flashed through his mind, and when he finally met Chi Heiran's eyes, Duan Siwen had only one choice left. He said, "Prince Chi, maybe I can make you take the eldest princess this way live on the chessboard." "Oh." Duan Siwen said, "I am Duan Siwen, Prince of Dali." Chi Heiran raised his eyebrows in surprise. This was really beyond his expectation. The Prince Dali who was already dead is not dead. Chi Heiran guessed that he might be the blood of the Duan family, but he thought it was the blood of the Duan family living outside, but who knew he was the Orthodox prince? Duan Siwen said that he went hunting last month, and he fell off his horse, but he did not die, but was slightly injured, but then a large number of assassins appeared to assassinate him. At that time, his guards were dead, injured, and those who could walk protected him to break through, but even so, he was seriously injured. In the end, except for 4 loyal guards, all the more than 50 guards he brought out at that time died, and 5 of them were seriously injured. The 5 people hid to recuperate, and came out to see when their injuries were almost healed. Only then did they realize that the sky had changed. The eldest princess was accused of murdering him, the palace was surrounded by the Gao family, and most of Dali's country fell into the hands of the Gao family. Duan Siwen is not an idiot, but although he and the eldest princess have different parents, their relationship is better than that of ordinary siblings. This is also the emperor's selfishness. He always asks their siblings to cultivate their relationship, hoping that even if he dies, Duan Siwen can take more care of him. Let's talk about the eldest princess, not only because she is the eldest princess, but also because she is his younger sister. He is also the only male in the direct line of the Duan family. He really can't think of a reason for the eldest princess to murder him, so he suspects that the assassination of him was done by the Gao family. He wanted to appear directly to calm the disturbance caused by the Gao family. But he worked hard for nearly 10 days, but found that he couldn't get close to the official mansion that supported the Duan family. He couldn't run to the street and wave his arms and say that he was the prince, right? So he can only try his best to get close to Chongsheng Temple. He is the blood of the Duan family. As long as he enters Chongsheng Temple, he will no longer be in danger. But he sacrificed the 4 guards around him, and he was seriously injured and passed out just after crossing the high wall. If he hadn't happened to bump into Qi Heiran, who also sneaked into the Chongsheng Temple, Duan Saiwen would have confessed there. Duan Saiwen confessed his identity, naturally hoping to cooperate with Qi Heiran. Although Dali broke away from Dazhu, the relationship between the two sides is actually not bad. Dali is a better neighbor than Jin and Zixia, which are always at war. Daki inherits Dazhu, and Duan Saiwen is willing to continue to maintain this friendly relationship. So Duan Saiwen revealed that Dali was originally a vassal state of Daki. Qi Heiran used the secret letter sent by Mu Yangling to lure Duan Saiwen into the bait, and the purpose was exactly this. Since Prince Duan is interested, we will set off for Qianan tomorrow. Duan Saiwen was taken aback, and asked, I'm going back to Qianan too. Of course, the Gao clan is now guarding all the intersections from here to the Chongsheng Temple, and the generals and officials who support the Duan clan are also under strict surveillance. It is very difficult for us to see them. Instead of wasting that time, why not come back with us, Daki? When the time comes, the emperor will issue an edict, and I will lend you tens of thousands more soldiers and horses. Are you afraid that Dali will not be able to take over? Duan Saiwen lowered his head and pondered. In this way, Dali must be crushed by Daki. Duan Saiwen smiled wryly. Now that his life is in the hands of the other party, how tough can Dali be? After Duan Saiwen fell asleep at night, Fei Bai said excitedly, Master, I didn't expect to cheat him out. Shut up, Qi Heiran turned over and said, I'm going back to the general's mansion in 3 days. If you have extra energy, go and carry Prince Duan tomorrow. Fei Bai didn't dare to speak any more. Qi Heiran didn't dare to delay such a major event as the conferment of a vassal state, and he had almost just entered Qianan, so he asked a guard to bring his letter and send it to the capital first. Qi Ziyuan had received Mu Yangling's letter before, and he was mentally prepared, so after receiving the letter, he only consulted with Rongxian and Yandu, and first sent a secret letter to Qi Heiran to let him handle it with full authority, before sending the secret letter. After going out, Qi Ziyuan issued an edict to reward the king of Dali the next day, conferring the emperor of Dali as the king of Yunnan, a hereditary replacement. With this edict, it is no longer a secret that Dali became a vassal state. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 691. The courtiers were startled, and only then noticed the rebellion in Dali. Some people thought that it was only 2 years since the founding of the country that Dali could be taken as a vassal state, which was a sign of prosperity in the future, but some people thought that this move was too hasty. Wang Wazao actually went to Dali privately, and hooked up with the Prince of Dali, which can't help but make people imagine. In front of Qi Ziyuan, someone vaguely reminded him to be careful about Qi Heiran. He can dote on his younger brother, but don't trust him too much. Qi Ziyuan's answer was to reprimand him and demote him on the charge of divorcing the royal brothers. It's not that he can't listen to Heiran's bad words, but that he doesn't allow anyone to advance the relationship between the two brothers. If he doesn't respond this time, more and more people will mention this in the future, and some people will talk about it in order to let him. I believe that maybe they will lure Heiran to do something, or directly set up a trap for Heiran. Throughout the ages, I don't know how many such things have happened. How many royal fathers and sons and brothers were suggested by the ministers to break their relationship. But as soon as these things delayed, Qi Ziyuan's 800-mile urgent secret letter was delivered to Qi Heiran. Qi Heiran immediately dispatched troops and asked Lu Dehe to lead the 50,000 soldiers of the West Camp to obey Duan Saiwen's orders. focusing on guarding against Xixia. When Qi Ziyuan's reward edict arrived, they split into two groups. Qi Heiran took the edict to Chongsheng Temple to find the king of Dali, and Duan Siwen led the army to directly collect the city occupied by the Gao family from the west road. Mu Yangling and Little Xiong went to send Qi Heiran off. Qi Heiran gave Little Bear a big kiss, and whispered to Mu Yangling, "You also clean up first, we may have to go back to the capital when I come back." Back to the capital. Qi Heiran nodded. Little Treasure is over 3 years old, and he has temporarily stood still among the people. In addition, this time Dali is respected as a vassal state, and Princess Dali is going to enter the palace. Big Brother wants to confirm Xiaobeo's name, which is considered 3 blessings. We don't need to go back to Beijing about the matter of Dali and Princess Dali, but Xiaobeo is related to the country. Not only me, Zijin, but also generals above the 2nd rank from all over the country will come to Beijing to celebrate. This is the biggest event since the founding of Daqi, so how much do you do? Prepare something. Qi Heiran hugged his wife and children and said with a low laugh, "Father-in-law happens to be from the 2nd grade. Mu Yangling's eyes lit up, "My father will also come to Beijing. It's natural, but I don't know whether the father-in-law will take the mother-in-law or not." Mu Yangling walked around happily. "I'll write a letter to my father and ask him to bring my mother and my younger brothers and sisters with me." "Don't," Qi Heiran hurriedly grabbed her, and said in a low voice, "Brother told me and Zijin about this, even Brother Rong didn't know about it, for Xiaobeo's safety, please don't spread it." Mu Yangling nodded again and again, "Don't worry, I know, when the imperial decree comes down, I will write to Dad again. Can I borrow your military pigeon?" Qi Heiran waved his hand readily, "No problem." Duan Siwen was also saying goodbye to Duan Yuking. The two of them had only been together for a few days and were going to be separated again. Duan Yuking was very reluctant to part with her. Duan Siwen already knew that Duan Yuking was seriously injured and would never be able to conceive again. He hated Gao for a while. So there is no parting sorrow, just thinking about waiting for the rebellion to be quelled, so that Gao can't survive or die. Early the next morning, the army set off. Qi Heiran led only 2,000 troops from the East Road. Most of the people from the East Road to Chongsheng Temple were officials and generals who supported the king of Dali. Unimpeded to the Chongsheng Temple. At this time, Duan Siwen has brought people to the 2 cities of the Gao family on the West Road, and then ordered Dali, and the Gao family perverted, persecuting the emperor, slandering the eldest princess, murdering the prince, and even blatantly besieged and desecrated the Chongsheng Temple. Everyone gets it and kills it. Duan's forces, which were originally scattered like sand, formed fists in an instant, outflanking Gao from east and west, and the most terrible thing was that Gao's move to encircle Chongsheng Temple angered the people. Faster! Qi Heiran confronted Chen Bing outside the Chongsheng Temple with the soldiers of the Gao family who surrounded the Chongsheng Temple, and did not take the initiative to attack. The other party estimated Qi Heiran's identity and strength and did not dare to attack him, but as Duan Siwen was getting closer and closer, Gao Yuan, the leading general on Gao's side, became more and more impatient. The Chongsheng Temple, which had been silent all this time, finally reacted. The gate opened, and 4 teams of monks ran out from inside, lined up on both sides, looking warily at Gao's soldiers. Master Yuan Guang, the abbot of Chongsheng Temple, and Emperor Dali came out hand in hand, and Gao Yuan's face turned pale suddenly. It was really raining when the house leaked. Chongsheng Temple is the national temple in Dali. More than 90% of the people in Dali worship it as a god. Although the people were dissatisfied with Gao's behavior before, because Chongsheng Temple didn't make a sound, everyone waited and watched, even Duan's those forces, also because the Chongsheng Temple has been silent and scattered like sand, acted independently. Now that the Chongsheng Temple stepped forward, the fighting power against the Gao family was no less than twice that of the Duan family. Chi Heiran saw everything in his eyes, and said in a deep voice, Chongshen Temple has such a great influence. Mr. Qian said, people in Dali believe in Buddhism. The former Chinese king and Dali emperor would become monks in Chongshen Temple when they were old. Their status is naturally respected. In addition, Chongshen Temple has been providing medicine to poor people, and it is often used in disasters. Relief to the common people naturally has such a reputation after accumulating over time. Mr. Qian doesn't think it's strange, Dali's national conditions have always been like this. Chi Heiran thought to himself, he would never allow one person or organization in Daki to be above the imperial court and royal family, so would Daki still belong to the Qi family? Because of the appearance of Chongshen Temple, Gao's rebellion was quickly quelled under the concerted efforts of the three parties, and Emperor Dali sent envoys to take Chi Heiran into the temple. Chi Heiran entered Chongshen Temple with the imperial decree. Emperor Dali and Master Yuan Guang were waiting for Chi Heiran in the main hall, and they accepted Qi Ziyuan's imperial decree calmly. Master Yuan Guang cared about the blood of the Duan family, and when he learned that the crown prince was safe, he withdrew with peace of mind and handed over the hall to Chi Heiran and Emperor Dali. The Emperor of Dali was very complicated now. The 1.5 months in the temple made him feel like years. After learning that the crown prince and princess had fled to Canaan, he was relieved but also a little sad. Their father betrayed Dezhou for the throne, and their brothers killed him and his nephew for the throne, and now, Dali has become a vassal state of Deqi, but it has only been 2 generations, Dali seems not to last long. Emperor Dali sighed, Chi Heiran squeezed out a smile, and entertained him warmly. Although he was a little uncomfortable, Chi Heiran still wanted to please. Dali became a vassal state of Qi. According to the past practice, Dali would send a princess there to marry him. He could have sent the daughter of a minister or a side branch of the Duan family as the princess, but after his daughter fled to Canaan and was rescued by Rongjun Wangfu, she was undoubtedly the best candidate. I heard that the prince and the emperor have a very good relationship. I only hope that he can take care of his daughter more in the future when he is so warm and friendly. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 692. After Chi Heiran announced the decree, it was already July when he returned to Zhezhou. The king of Yunnan, the former emperor of Dali, officially presented the letter of state to become a vassal state of Daki, and was willing to dedicate his only daughter, the eldest princess, to the emperor. This time, Qi Ziyuan did not refuse, but directly named her a virtuous concubine, the first of the 4 concubines. If Duan Yuqing wants to marry the emperor, she has to go back to Dali and get married from Dali, so Mu Yangling helped her pack her things, and Xiao Xia also came to see her off. Strange to say, Duan Yuqing lived in the general's mansion and got along more with Mu Yangling, but he had the best relationship with Xiao Xia. Even though Mu Yangling has always treated her with courtesy, Duan Yuqing always remembers that Mu Yangling cheated on her, and her fate at that time was in Mu Yangling's hands, even though she knew that the other party was mostly from her home country. But because of that confrontation, the feeling of being slightly above her makes her a little apprehensive. Afterwards, she had little affection for Mu Yangling, and Mu Yangling knew that she would probably become Qi Ziyuan's concubine when Chi Heiran set off on the expedition. First, she could not get too involved with the emperor's harem. The relationship is good, but naturally it is not good to have a deep friendship with Duan Yuqing. Although the 2 parties intentionally get along well, the relationship is not good. On the contrary, Xiao Xia's temperament and character are similar to Duan Yuqing's, and the 2 get along well. Perhaps it was because Xiao Xia was a pregnant woman, a weak person, and had a soft personality. Duan Yuqing felt that she was harmless, so she was naturally more willing to have friends with her. Xiao Xia's heart was at its softest, knowing what happened to Duan Yuqing, the tears flowed with her as if she didn't need money, so the 2 of them became like a group of sisters after only seeing each other twice. Now the 2 are hugging each other and saying goodbye. Seeing that they were crying uncontrollably, Mu Yangling hurriedly said, "Stop crying, it's not like you won't see each other forever. Princess Duan is going to Beijing, and we are going to Beijing too, but we'll be separated for about 2 months, and we'll be together again at that time we can meet." Xiao Xia wiped away her tears, and said, "Aling is right, after a few more years, our master will be released. If we want to meet, you invite me into the palace to talk." Duan Yuqing felt that the capital was unfamiliar and far away from his hometown, and it was just when he was hesitating, when he heard Xiao Xia's words, the tears that had stopped flowing out again, grabbed her hand and said, "Thank you for thinking of me." Seeing the two of them crying again, Mu Yangling was worried that they would start crying again if they continued talking. Xiao Xia was still pregnant, so she didn't dare to let her cry too much, so she quickly changed the subject and said, "Princess Duan, I have prepared something for you. Some local products and small gifts, so that the king and princess of Yunnan can feel at ease when they go back." Xiao Xia hurriedly wiped away her tears. "I also prepared some gifts for you, let's go and have a look together." Xiao Xia gave Duan Yuqing jewelry and clothing materials, especially clothing materials, and packed a big box. She doesn't have many jewelry, but they are all fashionable in the capital, and she shows them all to her, and there are some small stories in some jewelry, which she tells very pleasantly. Duan Yuqing was moved, knowing that she wanted to introduce some affairs of the capital to her, so she held her hand with tears in her eyes. Xiao Xia took her hand and said in a low voice, "You are a princess of a country, so there are naturally many jewels and jades, but the style is different from the ones in the capital. After you take these jewelry back, ask someone to make another set according to the same shape. When you arrive in the capital, you can't be underestimated." Duan Yuqing nodded repeatedly, and said in a low voice, "Thank you for teaching me. These fabrics are also for you. You also know that there is a shop under our grandfather. These fabrics are not rare. I have a big belly now. I really don't need them. You take them back and I will give you some clothes. After you go back, ask someone to cut at Xiao Xia's side. I originally wanted to ask Xiu Niang to cut a few pieces for you, who knew that the imperial decree came so suddenly." Duan Yuqing lowered her eyes and didn't say anything, but she remembered Xiao Xia's affection in her heart. She is no longer the big princess who was ignorant of the world. The fearful life of these few months has already enlightened her. Many people who didn't understand before she also understands everything, and she will carefully observe things that she didn't pay attention to before, for fear of annoying people. The fabrics given to her by the Xioxia family are very rare. Some of them can't even be produced by the Dali Imperial Palace. They can only produce 10 pieces a year to supply the royal family and dignitaries of Daki. Getting to these fabrics is also difficult. Fan Zijin was in the silk business, but it was impossible for Xiao Xia to take things from his shop casually. She had been here for more than 3 months, and she could see very clearly that although Fan Zijin was nice to Xiao Xia was not concerned about outside affairs. "I don't know, the general affairs of the mansion are also handed over to the steward to manage." So most of these fabrics were given to Xiao Xia by Fan Zijin, and Xiao Xia passed them on to her. The reason why I said this was just to reassure her. These materials were indeed given to Xiao Xia by Fan Zijin on purpose. At that time, he heard that Xiao Xia was pregnant, so he withdrew a few bolts of precious silk brocade for himself when he was happy. As a result, the amount of high-quality silk sent to the dignitaries in Beijing this year was much less. If you can't buy it, the ladies will inevitably have to inquire. I heard that Fan Zijin cut Hu Ti away. Although he was angry, but because of the other party's power, he dared not say anything on the surface, but secretly, Fan Zijin competed with the people for profit and acted domineeringly. His reputation spread. When Fan Zijin heard these rumors, he just sneered and ignored them, but when he heard that Xiao Xia had given away all the fabrics he gave her, he suddenly became angry, and said angrily, My lord scolded and cut off who for a Princess Dolly. Since she is not rare, there is no need to send these tributes to her in the future. Seeing that he was so angry that he was about to go to the backyard, Yan Mo quickly hugged his legs, knelt down and said, "Master, you can't be angry with Madam. Madam doesn't know that you were scolded because of these pieces of silk brocade. If I know, she must be very distressed, because you ordered not to bother Madam with outside affairs, so the little ones never dared to tell Madam these things. I am afraid that Madam does not know the value of those silk brocades. If she knows, then Princess Dolly, no matter how good you are with Madam, Madam will not give away things." Yan Mo saw that Fan Zijan's face looked better, and persuaded, "Master, although Madam's fetus is stable now, but after all, she is weaker than others. I see, it's better to wait for Madam to give birth to the child, and then we will tell her these things. It's precious, and it's not good for Yebai to suffer some grievances." Fan Zijan kicked him, and said, "Is the master the kind of person who pleases and pretends to be obedient? It's just a few pieces of silk brocade, and the master doesn't pay attention to it. I just don't understand why Hairan gave Mu Yangling a piece of grass. Yangling can also be offered in a bottle like a treasure, and the master gave such a precious silk brocade, how can she just give it away?" When Fan Zijan said this, his tone was angrily. Could it be that Chi Hairan dismounted from his horse and bent down to pick grass because of love, and the master spent so much time and effort dealing with people to cut off people, and the silk brocade that was transferred after so much scolding is not love? Yanmo also felt that master's hard work was wasted, but at this time the most important thing is to preserve the relationship between the husband and wife. Madam is weak-tempered and used to think too much. If master shows embarrassment or loses his temper to her, she may panic immediately. Gotta move my tires. That child was their master's treasure, and he couldn't be ignored at all, so Yan Mo hugged his thigh tightly, and only let go after Fan Zijan's anger subsided.